guys, STLYoungblood with you, and this is an interesting video because we are actually having an interview with pirates. We've got two players on that have been partaking in the darker side of the profession path in Star Citizen. And I think there's a lot here with the concept of piracy versus griefing and just the general perspective of that type of gameplay and the impact it has on other players. So, what I really wanted to do was have a frank and open and honest conversation with some people that are very knowledgeable on this topic and can also really not only provide insights to people that want to maybe do this side of the game, but also for those that are just playing the more lawful side and how they could have more successful interactions when dealing with pirates, and also potentially a little bit on how to avoid piracy in the game. I do want to go ahead and give my disclaimer that I've given whenever this topic comes up. But that's really surrounding the fact that piracy, whether you like it or not, is a necessary part of the game. Yes, it could probably all be left to NPCs and all the players could unite in some Care Bear fashion that's protecting each other against the evil NPC empire. But it's just not the same type of engagement, and it feels a lot more scripted. And there's that overwhelming ability and creativity that players have that really drives out interesting gameplay. So, whether you like it or not, I personally feel that it's necessary and important to have people that take on this role in the game. And because of that, that's why we want to have some conversation about it. So, with me today, we've got Wizywig and Dirty Bombs. Guys, if you'd like to introduce yourself, Wizzy, I said your name first, so why don't you go ahead and start and give us a little bit about yourself and when you are playing the dark side of the game, or really just in general, what you're up to.
Okay. So I've been playing the game for about 8 years now. So I started when Arena Commander was kind of the only thing to do, and just having PvP was basically the game. And then PU came out and tried everything from exploration to trading, to yeah, I got like one point was like speed landing caterpillars, which was really fun. Uh, there was like a big part of the early game where you're just trying to fit ships into other ships. That was a lot of fun. And then, lots of like NPC killing and all this fun stuff. And at some point, I realized it's getting a little repetitive. So piracy was a way to have like totally new and fresh experiences every single time.
Okay, I like that. Dirty, how about you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Captain Dirty. I'm the leader of Chaos Squad. I started back in, I pledged back in 2014. Played a little bit in the very early playable releases. I stole a couple ships, did that for a little while, flew everything that was possible to fly, and kind of put it away for a little while. I came back in 310 about 2 years ago and have been going pretty strong since then.
It's hard to believe 310 was 2, 3 years ago.
Wow.
Somehow it
Yeah.
Yeah,
feels like somehow it
Oh
yeah,
feels
my
like
God.
yesterday, and in other ways it feels like it was an eternity ago. Um, okay, well, I can say that I have personally never done piracy in Star Citizen. I have done a lot of PvP, and I've been in a lot of combat, and I have fought against piracy in the game. But the point that Wizzy made is an interesting one. The things get repetitive, and you kind of just go out and want to try something new. And there's something about piracy that's interesting because it's kind of a supported gameplay loop, but really it's more of the sandbox and how you create your own content. And from an Elite Dangerous perspective, which is arguably, I mean, what is it, a mile wide and a foot deep, or however they describe it. I got bored with the gameplay that it provided, and I went out and did some piracy in Elite Dangerous. Granted, the way that I did piracy was I would interdict and I would threaten, and then essentially I would just require, one unit of cargo because I just wanted that fun interaction without really screwing the other player, right? But that's kind of a similar story for me to what Wizzy said there. Dirty, what really attracted you to piracy in the game?
yeah, sure. So when I It's basically the reason why I started playing Star Citizen. I remember looking at the RSI website way back in the end of 2013, and checking out the Cutlass Black and thinking like that's a pretty cool looking ship. And I'm reading the descriptions, and they're saying like, oh yeah, you use your tractor beam to pull cargo or into your cargo bay with this. I'm thinking okay, so we can blow up some ships and take the cargo. Okay, where do I sign up? So really, truly, piracy is the reason why I'm playing Star Citizen. I don't think I would be here if piracy wasn't possible in the game.
Yeah, the writing
yeah.
was kind of on the wall that it was going to be supported in some form or fashion, right?
Yeah, it was. It always has been one of the core professions that CIG has advertised within the game. I have tried mining for a little while. I've done trading for a little while, and I've done bounty hunting. I wanted to explore all of those game loops when I first came back a couple of years ago. But honestly, after about 2 or 3 months, I was done with that and formed Chaos Squad.
That's actually a really interesting kind of transitional question coming off of what you just said. Hey, you went and you tried mining. Because from my perspective, and again, that's from somebody who hasn't really done it in the game, it doesn't seem, at least yet, like it would really be a lucrative career. So, in your mind, guys, is piracy lucrative in Star Citizen right now?
I would like to let me just say this. Very similar to how people saw PvP in Eve, I think PvP is the goal rather than a means to a goal. So I feel like, to me at least, piracy is the goal. The gameplay itself of piracy, of interdicting people, and like a lot of the times we're just like effectively like fishing with the buddies, except you're fishing for people. Um, and just having laughs, making jokes, and then people come in and the action starts, and you're trying to interdict them, and you're trying to make sure you don't kill them because you don't want to, you want to get paid. You don't want to just like blow some guy up, and then potential counterplay that happens and all this fun stuff, and then you go back to shooting the shit with your friends, and I feel like that is the gameplay loop. And uh, whether or not have I made money on piracy, I don't think I've made a profitable dollar or UEC personally. And I know Dirty probably has made quite a bit compared to me, but I felt that the piracy itself was the loop, not the game.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think just about every pirate I know currently playing would echo those sentiments almost word for word. Um, so just to kind of like give you a little bit of a breakdown, I would say about 1 in every 20 players will potentially negotiate for a ransom, maybe pay you. The odds are pretty low on getting paid, but there are some things that you can do to make that more possible. So the real key, if you're doing extortion, is that player's got to have some skin in the game, and usually that's got to be more than just time spent. Like they have to have spent some money, and if it's enough money where it's like a substantial potential loss for them, at that point you've got them on the hook, and you can maybe negotiate. My highest like ransom that I've received for a stolen ship has been $500,000.
That's a pretty good amount of money.
It's not bad for about 15 minutes worth of work. However,
Now, how many times has that happened, though?
that's 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
More commonly, we'll get people pay like 50K for a smaller haul. Rock miners currently, and for a while now, you can just steal out of the back of their rocks. You just open it up and start pulling the Hadanite out of there and into your backpack. You can take that directly to a terminal, even a legal one, and sell it for full price. So targeting rock miners is actually a great way to make money. They're a difficult target to find in the current state of the game, but probably the easiest one to actually profit from, because you don't even have to talk to them if you don't want to. You could just walk up, put 2 in the dome, and start, collecting the booty.
Yeah. Now
And just for
that's
context,
interesting too. And go ahead, Wizzy, and then we'll pivot.
just for very quick context, when Dirty says like he'll get like let's say 50K for a hit, that's like 50K split sometimes with like 4 or 5 people.
That's correct.
And it could have even been an hour of fishing and one person paying out. So it's not exactly like AUC per hour here.
Right. To put it into context, usually we've got about 5 players online, and we'll usually spend about 2 hours each. So 10 collective man hours. Just taking last night as an example, within a 2-hour gameplay session, 2.5, 3 hours maybe, we had 6 hits. Of those 6 hits, one of them paid 100K for a cargo bay full of refined quantanium that they were taking back to our corp to sell. So yeah, you split that 5 ways and it's 20K each. So you're looking at about 10K an hour for that time spent. So really, we're not quite in it for the money. However, I will say that there have been some other ways that we've made quite a bit of money. This is a little bit of a tangent, maybe, but give me a chance. So about a year ago, there was a guy who had quite a bit of AUAC who was funding anti-pirate operations. Any organization that contacted him with a website and a little bit of credentials was getting anywhere from 10 to 100 million AUEC. Me and about 3 or 4 of my members each created our own anti-pirate org and contacted this guy. When we were done, we had like $500 million embezzled funds. So if you're willing to get creative and take advantage of some opportunities out there, there's a lot of money floating around in this game.
That's interesting because
I love
that's almost breaking the fourth wall to some degree, right? Like it's yeah, that's cool. I like that. That's a little ingenious.
It became actually quite a big thing. I'm in contact with the leaders of several other pirate orgs, and the word spread very quickly, and we were all scamming this guy. I think if we collected like all of the pirate orgs that did the same thing to this guy, you're probably looking at 2 or 3 billion AUEC that we embezzled from this dude. He also got banned for about 3 months as a result of this, probably because that AUEC was definitely not legitimately obtained. But that's beside the point.
That feels like probably a result of some duplication and then him probably trying to create some interesting gameplay and alliances coming out of it, just probably from some, let's call it some non-standard means.
Right, yep.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about you've talked a little bit about embezzlement. Let's set that one aside for a moment. I think what we really looked at from a profitability perspective is you're relying on extortion, right? And the idea there is that it's not real easy to collect cargo from ships. So the threat there is that they essentially don't want to lose what they have because you will kill them if they don't pay up or they have to try and fight or run. So how is something like physicalized cargo going to impact how you conduct your operations and also maybe change your processes and your profitability?
Go for it, Dirty.
Sure. It's going to be an absolute game changer. Current state of the game right now, if I'm being really honest, has some major pros and cons. One of the major cons is persistence right now is not very good. And if a player Alt F4s, they just kind of vanish from our screens. So there's nothing for us to really steal. There's no explosions for us. It makes my little black heart very sad. But I still count those as wins because essentially it's the same thing. I just don't get to see my explosion, right? However, when persistence returns and we can just walk on board a ship and take the cargo or blow it up. You actually can currently blow up cargo ships and they will spawn boxes most of the time.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Important disclaimer.
Yeah, it's not always 100%, and full disclosure, those boxes are practically worthless, and you're going to spend an hour or two collecting them by hand and to put them onto your cargo ship and then go sell them. So, physicalized cargo will be massive. It's going to give us a much bigger incentive to actually do boarding operations. Currently, right now, we do boarding operations for the fun of it. There's not really a lot of point in it. We could just blow the ship up and be on our way to the next hit.
Well, and it probably gives a little practice for the future too, right?
Yeah, that's exactly why we do it. It's fun and it's training for the future.
Which is also things that people that are playing lawful gameplay will need the ability to do. So it's not just pirates that should practice that. Anybody really should.
Right. Yeah, the cargo is going to be valuable no matter what flag you're flying, right?
And just to add, like, once you have physicalized cargo, there will be more to gain from blowing things up. So you might actually not just kind of get to say like, oh, middle finger to the pirates because my ship blew up, so you get nothing. It might actually no longer be that. And the conversation might be more like, hey, how much money would it be worth it for you pirates to just take and go away so that you don't have to actually like move all this cargo into your ship and try to sell it and all this fun stuff. You can just make some money right now, and I go, you go, everybody's happy.
Yeah, I definitely do think it will be good for the gameplay on both sides of the equation. It'll definitely change the way the game is played right now. However, I do have to say that if CIG doesn't fix the profitability of the stolen goods versus the time spent, it'll kind of be a pointless gameplay loop, right? Like, if I go on board and I take the boxes and the boxes still aren't worth selling, then, okay, cool, it's another step in the process and I get it, we're still in alpha, right? I'm not going to expect the world. But I am hopeful that they will address this in the next patch, but they haven't mentioned it at all, so... Yeah. I'm also not holding my breath.
Even if it's not the next patch, I mean, you've already made a good point when you were talking about looking into backing it. It's not implied that piracy is supported gameplay. It's explicitly stated, right?
Correct.
In all of the gameplay loops, will have to have some way to be profitable, even if they're not today. You know, it's kind of like exploration. Like in the game today, exploration, you're just flying around and looking at stuff, and you're like, "Oh, it's really pretty," but you can't really do anything with it. You may find a wreck and you might say, "Oh, somebody quantum to me and give me 25 grand and you got something." But there's no way to really store coordinates of like a good mining find or, derelicts or really anything like that. And that's one of the more publicly known gameplay loops. So I think you're right. I think there are going to be things that need to be done in the game that will continue to support all of the gameplay loops. And piracy has to be one of those.
And I just want to add that if piracy becomes very profitable, then counter piracy needs to also become very profitable. Like right now, the entirety of being a bounty hunter and going after pirates, that is so not worth the risk. Like, what was it, 20,000 to kill a pirate? The amount of effort required compared to what you can farm for NPCs is intense.
Oh, yeah, and I'm here I am. Now you're talking about my gameplay loop, right? Like I don't do piracy, but I do a ton of bounty hunting. And I like the that thrill of doing the PvP hunt and going after the players. But eventually I get tired of chasing people around the damn system. It takes forever. And yes, there's things that you can do. You can bring in a blue or a mantis and try and lock people down, but it becomes tiresome to a point to where there's just easier ways to make money. So from the same perspective of you need to have a way to make money as a pirate, bounty hunters need to have a reason to want to chase real players around other than just the thrill, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. I think it was actually yesterday after our 5th or 6th hit in the server, somebody put a 300k AUEC bounty on me, and I honestly was like, that's actually not enough. It's really not. And it may sound a little bit boastful, but when you think about it, none of my guys have CS, right? So you can't use God Mode to track us. there's 5 of us, right? And
Yep.
all we do is PvP, right? So you're going to offer one bounty hunter 300k to like search the entire system with no leads, and then fight 5 people.
Well, and then on top of that,
You know?
you've got other problems too. Like there's nothing about organizational affiliation that's tied to things in the game. So let's say somebody puts out that bounty for you. What's to stop somebody on your team that doesn't have a crime stat from just dropping it, taking call to arms, taking the contract, and then actually making money off of a bounty?
And
Right.
just to add to that, with the current gameplay, depending on your ship, most ships that are in the fighter class or like heavy fighter or even like slightly combat oriented ships, if I want to disengage, there's nothing you can do to stay engaged with me.
Totally agree.
You did mention, bringing a mantis as a bounty hunter, and I will say in the 2 years of doing this, I've experienced that only once, and it is really the only way to keep us in the fight, because honestly, most of the time when we're engaged by a squad of light fighters, it happens sometimes. There's no profit in the fight for us, so unless it's
Right.
like we're gonna curb stomp these dudes, we just bail and then move on to like hunting our next target, because that's really what we're here for.
It's
So
what a
yeah,
pirate would do in real life.
exactly. Like I'm not trying to like get caught. I'm gonna make it as difficult as possible. Like you have to you have to bring the mantis if you want to catch me. Honestly, and even then, half the time I'm flying a ship that can outrun a mantis. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
there's
mean,
no way
and
to slow down an enemy ship that's fast and agile and has a good pilot. There's just no way to lock it down. And no matter how many people you can bring 20 people, and if Dirty knows how to dodge, there's nothing they can do.
there's just so many directions you can go in space. But yeah, the mantis is cool, man. Like a lot of people will think it's kind of a useless ship, but yeah, if you get it full stealth build, it's fast, it's relatively agile, it's not going to do any damage, but it can kind of indirectly do a lot of damage. So
if you, I will say I've soloed a freelancer in the mantis before. But any kind
right,
of like competent fighter, no, they're gonna kill you
yeah,
if
yeah,
you fight
And
them. Yeah.
and right now we have other ships, especially the Cutlass Blue, who have the ability to quote unquote lock somebody down, but there's nothing in the game that compares to the 20-kilometer range of a Mantis lockdown.
yeah. I mean, what's the blue right now? 2 kilometers. Like
Two
that's
kilometers.
you can't even like most of the weapons don't even shoot 2 kilometers. Like it's not. It's an embarrassing range. Okay, so let's pivot just a little bit here, and I want to hit kind of a bigger target or a bigger topic here, I should say, and that's one that I kind of hit in the intro, and that's what do you guys feel about people that say that piracy is griefing or people that are doing piracy are ruining the game? What's your perspective, maybe objectively, and then also maybe a little bit of subjectively with kind of your opinions layered into it, if those are different?
Sure, you want to go
There's
ahead, Lizzie?
Yeah, sure. I'll start off. So I think there's very few things that I would consider griefing in the game, and most of them involve around denying people the ability to even begin a gameplay loop. So something like you won't let people get off of the station because you're shooting everything that comes out of a hangar, and you know how to dodge whatever missiles that the NPCs throw at you, or pad ramming within the spawn locations, right? Like I think those are just the most terrible gameplays that you can do. It's a way to just feel like the big cheese in an area without actually bringing any kind of anything to the game whatsoever. Other than that, I don't think I wouldn't call catching people out griefing. Like, hey, if I want to set up a turf that like you can only mine on this planet because I say so, and you have to pay me a racketeering fee, like I think that's totally legitimate. If I catch you doing something in the middle of space by intercepting you with a mantis, it's not easy. Like setting up a mantis is a lot of work for a snare, and um, you know that's not griefing. That's a gameplay loop. That is
Yeah,
actual work.
the ship exists for a reason.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna disagree with Wizzy a little bit. at least on part of the griefing definition. I will absolutely agree that pad ramming ships on the pad or approaching the pad, like on their final approach, yeah, you can't really do that. But that's really where the line is. I've actually had direct contact with some CIG reps about this because Chaos Squad kind of has a reputation as a griefer org within some Care Bear circles. We definitely push the envelope. We will absolutely engage in station blockades where we will gun down any ships on pads. And I've actually got it from CIG that this is absolutely a legitimate gameplay loop and they do not consider it griefing. And the reason for that is because they have the station defenses that are actively firing at you. Now, it definitely can be argued that the station defenses could be more accurate. And I will say that they have become more deadly in the recent patch, especially those like missiles and torps that you just can't seem to evade. However, I do think it does add something to the game. Not to take away from the player who's stuck on the station, their frustration in this. However, we offer a very reasonable 30K to pass for one ship, or a 200K. If you send us 200K, we'll shut down the whole blockade, right? And we'll go on and we'll move on and do something else. Right, so it's not without some opportunity to change things. Those people on the pads, yeah, they're probably screwed. They're not getting up. They're not going to be able to fight us. However, there's a whole other server full of people who can and do come to engage in PvP with us when we do these sorts of things. So that is an emergent gameplay loop.
I'm curious too, and I will say on this topic, the current, I guess I can't really talk to current. So 317.1 and before, station systems that are supposed to be in place to protect players were severely anemic. They were not doing the job that they were supposed to. You had server latency, and then I think other things that are coming in the game that are supposed to be like the quanta system that's identifying the fact that there is wanted players, and that heat map triggers, and then it spawns a lot of defenses, and then it's supposed to be able to tie you guys up and potentially giving dynamic missions and all of those things that are supposed to kind of help that lonely player that's stuck there and not in the game. I'm honestly a little bit on the fence. I think I look at what you're saying and I say, when everything is supposed to be working right, I have no issues with what you're talking about. I think, again, not necessarily on .2. I haven't experienced this personally yet. But I think with the way the game is right now, with awareness and responsiveness of ships that are flying around, and the ability to kill a ship even before a player gets to it, that's that feels like a little bit of a gray area to me. So I'm kind of in between you guys on this topic. But long term, I don't think I disagree. I think when you guys are putting a lot of heat on a station and it draws a lot of attention, and then it's a large combat area, honestly, that kind of gets me excited too.
So let me jump in. I'll agree with you. 3 patches ago, the stations really didn't have the missile defenses, and the guns were desyncing to a point where if you're flying even at like SCM speed, they're not going to hit you. However, the station defenses have improved, and I've noticed that they've been doing a little. CIG, I think, has been doing a little bit of work, kind of tuning the UEE Navy response. So, and I've tested, not this patch, but last patch, we did a couple station blockades, and very quickly there were 3 or 4 hammerheads and UEE Navy wardens at the station engaging us. You combine that with the players and the station defenses, and all of a sudden we really don't have much time to monitor the pads, and so now players can get out of there.
So maybe that's a reliability discussion then, and that's probably a lot that goes into this game, right? Because I think, again, while I've never really been on that side that's conducting the blockade, I've been fighting a lot of players that are red, and harassing Port Alizar tends to be a favorite of people that want a PvP. And I very rarely will see NPCs in those areas. So I don't disagree. I'm not calling you a liar here or anything. I don't see that on the regular basis that I would expect to if that's performing in a way that it really should. But it's good to see that you being on the that side of things, especially if you have a large group with you, are starting to trigger those responses because that's probably an important thing for you guys is to say it's not just us in God mode waiting for you to run to your ship. The game is fighting us too, not just you.
Right.
There's
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, we really can't just sit and hover over the station and just like nuke everything. You have to be moving. You have to be jucking and jiving. I will say that it does depend on how many people are there with crime stats, how big their crime stats are, and how long they've been in that area. So it's not always a constant thing. They're not going to show up right away. But
That's fair.
we
I guess
have seen some very large
in order
responses.
to conduct a blockade, you need to stay present in a long time. And probably a lot of those situations that I'm fighting in are less organized than what you're discussing. It's probably people that are sitting there picking on people, they're quantuming out like one of the problems that we've been talking about and then coming back in, right? So maybe it's a different experience from what you're discussing here.
And
Could be.
I think one thing to know that's really important is CAG absolutely has the tools to control what experience they want. So I think players saying, "Oh, as a player, you should limit yourself to XYZ gameplay because, you know, this part is a little bit unfair." To which I say we absolutely had no fire armistice zones around stations for a long time, and CAG intentionally removed any of those mechanics, and they're soon to remove all the purely you cannot shoot armistice zones around planetary areas because they want this sort of interaction. They want the emergent gameplay that comes out of players wanting to lock things down and actually have like interesting play there rather than just a bunch of people pad ramming.
If I'm,
Um,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, that's basically it. Like there are mechanisms that CIG has absolutely to negate certain gameplay styles if they felt that that is a detriment to the game. I think the number one complaint that people have when they say like I'm being griefed is that there's a lot of players who really don't at all consider PvP or practicing PvP as an experience they want to have in the game when they're playing a full PvP game. And then of course you come up to them when with multiple scenarios, whether it's being intercepted or it's being shut down at a station, or you're on a planet and you know suddenly there's a whole bunch of pirate ships around you. Um, Now they don't know what to do. Now they're like, well, you just ruined my fun in a PvP game when PvP happened. And I think that's the problem that people have is they're not considering the kind of game they're playing.
I do agree with that. I think it is largely an awareness issue. Um, and yeah, there's a group of players that really just do not want to engage in PvP. Maybe they even are aware that it's possible. They just don't want to experience it. And I think it's fair to be that player. It may not be a reasonable expectation in the current state of the game. It's I wouldn't say it's impossible to avoid PvP. Actually, I think if you really wanted to avoid PvP, it's not that difficult. But I don't know if a lot of players are really educating themselves in order to get to that point.
And that's
Well,
the
and that's
magical transition.
yeah, I think that's where awareness goes a long way, right? And I think this is a nice transition to the next topic here is really how can people avoid piracy? We don't have the PvP slider. I super don't want the PvP slider. Everybody seems to not everybody. Care Bears tend to cry for the PvP slider. Um, or like a Elite Dangerous offline mode, which is whatever. It may be some people may appreciate it. I think it's whatever. But I think there's a few things that I know of when I'm hauling valuable cargo that I tend to do to avoid piracy. And I'll share those. But then I'm curious about your perspective as somebody who tends to try and capture people, what you guys do. So, for example, if I've got a caterpillar full of laranite and I know I'm going from, let's just call it Crusader to Hurston, I tend to jump one direction for a little bit, bail out of quantum, and then redirect towards my end destination because I know that's going to spit me out at a different location, basically getting me out of the quote unquote typical trade lanes. Um, aside from that, I tend to know what some of the hotbeds are. But to avoid piracy, you really have to avoid either the trade lanes or the popular areas. So, from your perspectives, Wizzy, you went first. So let's start with Dirty. What can people really do if, like, maybe they realize PvP is a part of the game, but they want to do their best to not put themselves at risk? What should they do?
Sure. So the things that you listed really are the two main things. I would say the biggest thing is actually knowing where the hotspots are. Because pirates, we already spend a lot of time like hunting and stuff, even in the popular spots. So we're probably not going to go to the unpopular spots because it's going to take us even longer, right? So therefore, if you just go online and say, all right, well, what are the best spots to go do this thing, and then don't go there, you're probably not going to see any pirates. You may find some rando murder hobos, but that's just, they're everywhere, right? Um, Traveling a distance away can be helpful. It needs to be a far enough distance, and sometimes, like, if you're going from one planet to another planet, you better be going real far away for that to make a difference because we can change where we are positioning ourselves to sort of increase our odds of capturing people who are employing that strategy. Essentially, the closer we are to the target destination, the better odds that we have, even if you do travel a little ways away. Now, if you're going a quarter of the way across the planetary system, then it might not work. But yeah, those are great ways to avoid piracy, and I would say that they are the main ways to avoid piracy. You also can fly with escorts. I know this is a very hot topic in the world of Star Citizen, but I will say from personal experience, if you have competent escorts, first of all, they're going to see us probably about the same time we see you, maybe even a little earlier. Hopefully not a lot later than we see you. But they may be able to give you just the amount of time that you need to get out of there. Same thing goes for like if you get interdicted in a quantum snare, right? If you have enough backup and can fight us away, kill our mantis, you can just leave, right? So people kind of poo-poo on this quite a bit, but actually it can make a difference.
I mean, that goes back to one of the things I preach over and over again is find an organization and play with an organization because having people with you is so critical. And it doesn't even matter what gameplay you're doing. I mean, you guys could all be doing different things solo. Having somebody that could jump to your aid and yeah, maybe in a piracy interdiction system in the middle of the system, you're probably going to not have enough time to get them there. But in general, just having people that can be with you when you need it is so valuable and it's so underrated in this game for some reason.
Yeah.
And I just want to add a couple of other things there. Like, I mean, there is one bit of a fault for CIG. Like, being an escort right now is so not profitable because the profits
Yes.
of like trading is not that high. The profits of trading are at best as close to as the profits of bounty hunting or any other gameplay loop. They're all exactly the same. So to hire escorts is to basically to reduce your income to almost nothing. But if CIG was to address that in some meaningful way, then they could actually totally make escorting an excellent gameplay loop where you are assisting traders so that piracy is not as big of a deal.
That's absolutely a fair point. And just to kind of quickly circle back around to the time frame thing, depending how spread out your group is, your org is, if you're running like a large hauler or something, it might take us like 15 minutes to crack your shields and start wearing down your hull or trying to disable you at that point. Yeah. So you may have a good window to call in support.
Hmm.
Yeah, and all they got to do is drop that mantis or get the mantis away from your cargo ship, and you get to escape with your cargo. So it's not a like a failed proposition like so many people think it is on the online forums.
Yeah, no, I,
Absolutely.
I agree with that. And I think, Wizzy, you made a really good point there about the balance of payment. And I think that's probably a bigger picture discussion about the game because you're right. Like hauling cargo needs to make enough to be able to pay for escorts, and it just doesn't right now. But also, 90% of the time that you fly, outside of not even 90%, probably 98% of the time that you fly, you're not going to really even come across another player. You may have NPCs that are popping up, but the state of the game right now is pretty safe for cargo hauling. So you almost have this situation where you need more players, you need more danger from NPC, but you need higher payouts. So something like cargo hauling or even like mining, for example, and hauling your goods back pays enough that sure, if you're super lucky and you incur no threats, you can do this all by yourself. But if you, in most of the time, incur some sort of, hostile threat, then it's an entirely different situation. But you made enough so you could still pay for your escorts and keep you safe. And I think that's just a bigger discussion and game balance conversation that's really important to support all of the loops. And honestly, it's a really complicated thing for them to work out. And I don't know how they're going to get to that point until server meshing comes in. And yes, we're at a huge improvement. I think we're at what 115, 110 person servers right now compared to the 50. We've more than doubled. That's a great step. But we are so big. Stanton is huge, and it's one system. Like things fundamentally need to shift from a game perspective and from a payout perspective and a technology perspective, and it would be really interesting to track how that goes.
And I just want to point out one other thing about avoiding pirates. And what's important to note is there's a lot of theory crafting about like do this route or trying to minimize your risk by flying this way versus this way, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, you have to remember pirates are not NPCs, and that's a very important aspect. Some players, they're going to want to blow you up, and there's nothing you can do about it. But if you're actually fighting against a pirate who wants to make money, or even griefers, uh, or lack of a better way to describe it, just like they're here for killing. They're here for killing and nothing else.
Yep.
You can absolutely end that combat by basically saying, like, what would it cost for you to go away? And a lot of times there's a fairly low price for that. They'd be like, give me 10K and I'll just leave you alone and I'll consider it a win. And you will be massively happy because you just paid 10K and you have like 200,000 in your cargo ready to refine. They'll go away. You pay a little bit of money, whatever. Call it cost of doing business. And
Yeah.
so much of your own headaches could be avoided just by seeing that, like, at the end of the day, they're players too. This is not like you working in real life terrorist organizations that you're funding.
Yeah.
You're funding players who are also out here to have a different kind of fun than you, and there's ways to make them just go away.
Yeah. And going back to that, playing in an organization thing too, and what you just said, um, and this also kind of piggybacks off of, Dirty's point about, it doesn't take that long for people to get to you. I've survived now 2 times where somebody has gotten me at a really inconvenient point and they have either threatened to kill me or asked for money, and I have engaged in conversation and basically distracted long enough for my backup to get there because we had a party alive and I was able to get people to get to there. And I think that's almost a tactic in itself. Now, there's probably a certain amount of time where you have to be able to make that decision, but I didn't want to lose what I had. And just through buying time, I was able to get the support that I needed. And I survived both of those times.
Yep, that happens. I kind of have a internal, kind of timer that like, okay, are we negotiating? All right, I'm gonna give this person 5 minutes to figure out how to find my name in the MO trader and send me my ransom.
I've punched in my code the wrong time 5 times.
Right, right. What is it? What's the name again? Hang on, I can't find it. Right. You know, we've been around the block a few times, right? At this point, so you know, your mileage may vary with that tactic, but it absolutely is a tactic that can work for you.
Yeah, experience on both ends matters, right?
Yeah, and you know, I want to add to you know what Wizzy was saying about just pay the ransom, right? Like, it's our policy to do our very best to offer you a ransom that will still allow you to collect at least half of what you expected to make on that run, and I think that that's pretty fair, especially considering that we could just kill that person, and in the future, we can just kill that person and take the cargo and hopefully sell it
And
at a
their
profit.
ship.
Right? So really, if a pirate is offering you a ransom, they're doing you a favor. Right? They're giving you the pass that says, I don't want to do any PvP. Fine. You don't have to do any PvP. You just give us a little bit of money and we'll go away.
And Death of a Spaceman changes a lot, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And even if it's not somebody offering you a ransom, you can still ask for it. Like, once again, you're not dealing with NPCs, you're dealing with people. You can still send that message out being like, hey, get off my back and I'll pay you. And
Pirates
where
aren't
it
the
goes.
only one. Yeah, they're not the only one in the sandbox, right? The lawful person can be in the sandbox too. Create your own castle.
And you know, I want to quickly say that I think we get a lot of like kind of intermingling with the Eve community, and in the Eve community, piracy was once a thing, but really is no longer. And I think a lot of that has to do. And I'm not a big Eve player. I played a little bit, but from what I'm told, it's the moment that they introduced the kill boards. That's when piracy basically became impossible in that game. And even if you, as a industrialist, shall we say, if you paid that pirate, you could no longer reasonably expect them to keep their word. So, you know, obviously I don't control all of the pirates in Star Citizen, but at least the ones in my org, we do keep our word. And most of the other groups that I work with have pretty good reputations too, right? So really in Star Citizen, you've got good odds. If you just pay your pirate their ransom, they're probably going to let you go, because reputation does matter and word gets around.
Yep, that's fair. All right, so let's pivot a little bit. I want to wrap this up here probably in the next 10 minutes or so. Away from why piracy is okay and kind of what dictates how you guys engage, more to those that are interested in doing piracy. So let's start really simple. How does a pirate get started?
Sure. You can get started with the jumpsuit and a gun. And you can do your first piracy from whatever station you wake up on. You don't even need a ship. You can sneak on board something. If you get lucky, you sneak on board something that's carrying something profitable. You take your arc-light pistol, you kill the pilot while you're in deep space so you don't get a crime stat. And in some miraculous, magical future that's hopefully not too far away, you sell that cargo for a profit, right? So it's very, very easy for even a single player to get, not very easy, but it's easy enough for a single player to get started in Star Citizen. If you want to get started seriously, you buy a ship.
Let me pause you real quick.
Sure.
One thing that's in game right now to the topic of avoiding piracy, when you get on your ship, if you're ever questioning if you are alone, hit F11 and check your ship channel to see if you are or not. You will know immediately if another person is on your ship.
That's
Whether
true.
that is a sustainable long-term thing, we don't know, but right now it works. And in addition to that, anytime somebody can get onto your ship, aside from blowing a hole in the side of it or damaging it enough and just glitching into your ship, I would definitely call that griefing. Anyway, sorry. 2 past topics we already hit. Your conversation there really triggered for me. So
No, yeah,
go on.
I agree. Using any kind of exploit, this is really where I personally draw the line to kind of circle way back. Using any kind of exploit, glitching through ships or the old call bug, any of that stuff, I definitely do consider griefing. It's kind of past the line for me. But yeah, so if you want to get serious and start your Star Citizen career as a pirate, the first thing that you do is you buy a Mantis or a ship with an EMP. You get some distortion weapons on it so that you can shut down target ships. You buy some armor, you buy a gun, and then you start learning. Because if you just go out thinking, "Oh, I'm going to pirate the first thing that you see," the first thing that you're going to see is going to be a fighter, and they're not going to have anything valuable. You can't really pirate them, right? So you have to know where to go find your targets. So you actually have to do some research. It's helpful to know those game loops personally and to have done them, so that you understand how they work, how long, what kind of time frames that you've got. That's really how you get started as a pirate, is tackling that learning curve of where can I actually find targets who have things that are valuable on board.
And sometimes that means talking to non-pirates and being like, "Hey, let's learn about mining and then find out how are people mining, where are the mining spots, where are the best places to mine." You start to get ideas. Communication. It's not a solo game. Piracy is by definition going to be a multiplayer experience. So
Well,
see
and
how other
we'll get to that in just a sec, but that's a perfect pivot point, and that's really, are there certain types of players that you target?
Yes.
Expand.
Okay, so piracy is about theft at its heart, right? If you look at the definition of piracy, it is um, attacking another vessel at sea or using a seabound vessel to attack a target on land to extract value from that target. If you're not extracting value from your target, or at least attempting to, you're not doing piracy, right? So then what that means is, yes, we target players who are doing the industrialist, career paths. They're mining, they're trading. Maybe in the future they're doing like transporting like people, right? That would be an interesting thing to do, I think. And also because it is the case that an educated industrialist will know good strategies to avoid piracy, what tends to happen is we end up catching the people who don't know better, right? So this is not like intentionally targeting people who just don't know what they're doing, haven't learned those lessons. It's just kind of the way it works. But yeah, those are mostly the types of people, a lot of the times, that we see are, a lot of times a little bit new to the game, but that's not always the case. Sometimes people are just brazen. They've been trading for months. Nobody's ever pirated them before, until that one unlucky day when we've got a snare up in their path. Right?
Is that why piracy has such a shitty reputation? Is that because you tend to capture people that are new and they go on Reddit and are complaining about losing their money the first time they've played?
I think that contributes. So I will say, out of the people that have communicated with me, a smaller than what you might imagine portion of them are like, "Oh yeah, it's my first week, day," right? But often we get players who are in the like 3 to 6 month range, or maybe it's their first year even, right? Somewhat experienced players. However, yeah, sometimes we do run into these players, and a lot of the time, though, they think what's happening is pretty cool. Like, they were not expecting this to happen on the first time they went to go mine. Sometimes they are pretty salty. And yeah, I'm sure they do go to Reddit and Spectrum and say, "This game sucks. Some griefer just came and killed me for no reason." But that's just kind of like their perspective. They may not have had general chat open to see that I tried to communicate with them. They probably immediately turned off their hail, because that's been a known bug for forever that just got fixed, by the way. But people don't know that so much, so we got to spread the word on that. And the habits are already there. I still do it instinctively.
As a YouTuber and always thinking somebody's coming for me, that is a super annoying bug, and I'm glad it's been fixed.
It was the worst.
But even without the bug, the notification system is such crap right now that 99% of the time it's not a hail, it's just another spam of like, "By the way, this one random NPC has a contract for you."
Yeah, that too.
And you just get in the habit of like deny, deny, deny. But
Yep.
Yeah, it's also never a positive experience to lose something you've worked for, even either it's from you working or you just bought a bunch of stuff into your carrier and you're carrying it somewhere and it's like 2 mil sitting, in your cargo bay right now and you don't want to lose it. So everybody doesn't feel good about losing. So it'll always kind of have that negative connotation to it, but it also makes the game interesting. So it's one of those like you hate it, but without it, it would suck.
Yeah. Wizzy, you said something earlier that makes me curious. Should you ever be a solo pirate aside from Dirty's example of sneaking on a ship out of a station? Is there ever a good reason to be a solo pirate?
Solo pirate, I absolutely think yes. There are And it's not for everybody. For me personally, I don't enjoy that gameplay loop, but I know a lot of people, especially in Chaos, who enjoy thinking of ways to be alone and to extort money from people or to kind of like figure out how people work and how to make that a gameplay loop. And that is absolutely a challenge. It's not straightforward. It's not something you can go on YouTube and look up a tutorial for. Um, and uh, there's plenty of ways you can catch people out mining and see that they're starting to load up on Quantanium and be like, "Do you want me to go away or not?" You can,
You have 14 minutes. Make your choice.
yeah, like I know you just cracked your rock. Look, there's money on the floor. Are you willing to give all that up? And that's a totally viable tactic. There's other tactics of, okay, so you might not be able to interdict people, but you might know where the shipping lanes are. You might know where people might be following a person who is about to do a trade. You might have a retaliator and be ready to torpedo that person, right? Like it doesn't have to be piracy in a mantis. It can be piracy in anything. You can also find people in bunker missions and ask them to pay to go away, or their ship might blow up. All sorts of fun different ways to uh, find what is a person not willing to lose and how much are they willing to pay to not lose
Variety of extortion. I like it.
it.
Yeah, and if I can add, I would say that a good reason to pirate solo is because you want to take a challenging gameplay loop and make it even more challenging. It's absolutely possible to do it, but it's a lot easier and, in my opinion, much more enjoyable to do it with a group. So it's not to say you have to do it with a group. But yeah, I think it's a lot more fun that way, and it also kind of increases your odds of finding people, which is big.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so I got one more question, and then I want to pivot to one last topic, and then we'll probably wrap up from there. So, those watching, we're close. So, if you're running a group of pirates, how do you like to make up your fleet? Like, How are you configuring yourselves to make sure that you are most successful?
Sure.
Go for it, Dirty.
Yep. It depends on what you're doing, right? So, an interdiction, the quantum snare situation. I usually
Tell me
have.
you're using a mantis.
Oh, absolutely. You have to use the mantis. We don't, honestly, Chaos Squad doesn't even really run the Cutlass Blue. I
The blue
sold
doesn't
mine a
even
long
have a
time ago.
snare, though, right? It's just
No, it's just got the dampener, and that's only really useful in atmosphere situations when like your mantis buddy is charging up their snare. I find the Cutlass Blue is almost completely obsolete when compared to the mantis.
And it
Um,
doesn't really have good maneuverability and firepower to make up for that, at least.
It's got
yeah.
pretty decent firepower, but yeah, maneuverability is what they're there.
Yep. So typically, we'll run a mantis and as many warlocks as we can get. The reason for the warlock is because of its speed. Very few ships can outrun it. I think only one of the types of ships that we would want to catch can outrun it. That being the MSR,
MSR.
I believe. Yep, and it's going to burn past your mantis too. So yeah, MSRs are handy little ships to have if you fear pirates are camping your space lane.
Or if you just love ships, the MSR is a beautiful ship.
Yep, it is nice to
But
look
it
at too.
is limited in its functionality. It's not the best trader, by far. It's not even the best trader of its size, and not a good combat ship alone. So it's always a trade-off.
Yep.
Yep.
As far as group comp goes, if you're doing something in atmosphere, I think you can get away with using the Sentinel. It keeps up with most of your target ships just fine in atmosphere. The reason why I don't utilize it in deep space is because a lot of your target ships can outrun it in that situation. But it does have a nice, it's tankier, and it's got a lot more firepower than the Mantis, and it can absolutely make the difference if your targets, your targets are on the surface of a moon or planet. It can be great in that situation. But generally, we're running about a 5 to 6 person group with 1 to 2 mantises and as many ships with QEDs as possible.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Last topic before we wrap up. Pyro. I think there's a general idea here that as soon as the evil system comes in, all the bad players are going to run away to Pyro, and people are going to be totally safe in Stanton, right? What do you guys think about how that's going to play out? Where the value proposition is in Stanton, where the value proposition is in Pyro, and how you guys will conduct your operations?
The second people think that the bad guys are over there, that is exactly where the bad guys are not going to be. Because we want to extract value, which means we want to go where the traders are, which means that if that's in Staten, then we're going to be in Staten, right? Like last place you want to go as a pirate is an empty spot where only other pirates hang out, because it's not like we're pirating another pirate, because they're just going to fight back.
But how does that change? And my assumption here, and I'm getting against what I said I wasn't going to do. I'm theory crafting now, but I'm assuming money follows risk. And if the money means that you're running to Pyro to do cargo or combat or whatever, does that mean that you are spreading your forces? Does that mean that you are now all of a sudden going to Pyro to run and be safe because there's no monitoring? Like, how does that impact things?
Yeah, it is a little bit speculative, right? But like, let's just
Yeah.
assume that the high reward will be in the high risk system, right? So whatever is in Pyro will sell for the biggest bucks, per unit of cargo compared to anything else in the game. That will incentivize some pirates to go out there for sure. Um, However, it's not the only factor, right? Like, we also have to think about like our risk involved and our time spent, right? So Pyro is planned to be a much larger system than Stanton, which may make it more difficult to find your targets. It may make it more time consuming to find your targets, right? It also, just by the nature of Pyro, right? It's a dangerous place. Everything you read about Pyro says bring a friend. It's going to be dangerous, right? So probably people will believe that, and they'll be bringing backup when they come in, right? And so this will increase our risk. It's my personal belief that a lot of the easier targets are going to be still in Stanton. And unless they change the security response times and values in Stanton, pirates are going to operate just fine in Stanton. We've been doing it for a long time. Right? So I do think that Pyro will be a great place to go lay low if we all have a bunch of crime stat on us. It might be a good place to go make a big score, right? Because pirates, man, if there's one thing that we like, it is that big hit, right? Like, you can do 150K hits, you'll forget them, but you will remember the one where you scored a half mil or a mil or whatever it is, right? So yeah, I do think people will be out there. But I honestly think a lot of our targets of opportunity are still going to be in Stanton, and so will we.
And I think
Yeah.
Pyro's going to bring one other group into the game. So right now we don't have this group, but once we get server meshing and let's say 3, 4, 500 people on the server, I'm not even talking about, the end game, but enough people, and you create an area where there's limited opportunities to make a lot of money, you're going to start to get into turf wars. And that's not really piracy. That's more like an organization is going to go somewhere, lock this place down, and then send their traders, because their traders are going to
Jump
extract.
Town, right?
It's like Jumptown, but if Jumptown was actually profitable. I guess like
Yeah.
Jumptown V1, where it was massively profitable, and if you lock it down, you're going to extract that profit quickly. And there's a lot of UEC per hour, and it's going to pay for the 10 people who are defending the area. But that's not really piracy. Piracy is more opportunism, right? Like you're looking for opportunities to score money from people who are potentially underpowered compared to you because of your preparedness. And going to somewhere where you know there's going to be an army, that's like not the right move for a pirate.
Yeah.
Yep,
All right.
full
Well,
agree.
guys, this has been awesome. This is a really good chat. I think we're answering a lot of questions that people have about piracy. Chances are we're answering or not answering a lot of questions that people have, though. So if you guys are interested, I'd love to do this again. So if, regardless of whether you are or not, people that are watching the video, please put comments in asking questions, whether how do you live with yourselves or or how do I become a pirate better, or I'm doing this and it's not working, or really just anything surrounding the topic of piracy and Star Citizen. Wizzy, Dirty, if you guys are willing, I'd love to collect those comments, those questions that people have, and then maybe do a version 2 of this and get it back out to the people.
Hell yeah, that'd be awesome. And thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Same sentiment here. Thank you for having us. And yeah, please ask questions. We would love to interact more with the community.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, that's going to be it for this video. I appreciate you all watching. Stay tuned for a lot more coming soon. Get your questions in the comments. Have yourselves a wonderful night and take care.